Hi everyone, I'm Allie with Potomac Beads, and in today's YouTube video, you are going to see me make this minimalist necklace. We're going to be working with the Montego beaded bead, so if you want and you like that look, although you can use any bead, you can check out that YouTube video and watch that first to make the beaded bead. All you need then is some silk cording, a couple little dangles or charms, and join me in making this fun, simple, minimalist necklace. So to get started with this minimalist necklace, what you're going to want is some Griffin beading silk thread. I'm using size 4, which is going to be about a 0.6 millimeter diameter on this cording, and it's nice and thin. It's going to feel like a really kind of micro chain. The reason I'm using the gray is because I do want it to look like a silver chain. There's so many different color varieties to choose from, but you're going to take your whole entire cording out of, or cording off here, and remove the whole thing from the Griffin cording. Now you want to keep this because you probably will not use all the cording at once. If you're doing a knotted necklace, you may use it all, but if you're doing something simplistic like the necklace I'm wearing, you are not going to use all of this cording at once, so keep that. You do want to kind of pre-stretch your cording. So you're going to stretch this cording and working with it, stretching to make sure that it doesn't have extra give and a little bounce. It is silk cording, so you want to keep that in mind as you're working with it. I have here on my bead mat kind of my bottom charm along with a jump ring that I'm going to add to the bottom. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be cutting apart my Montego earring. I actually already did one and cut that apart, or you can use other beaded beads. Chances are, if you are a bead weaver, you may have some beaded beads laying around. You can also just use a simple gemstone bead as well. So I'm going to take my beaded bead here and get ready and just kind of have this on the mat. I have different options here in case you want to use more than one. You can layer this simple layered necklace as much or as little as you want. The first thing I'd like you to do is to go ahead in and tie a knot at the end of your cording. You're going to tie just a plain old knot. Don't overthink it. Tie it nice and tight. From here, I want you to do a double knot. The reason that I'm doing a double knot is because the knot is going to be too small to hang out into our little knot covers. We need a double knot so that way it will stay in place and it'll stay inside that knot cover. We're basically doing 2 strands. So the first, whatever we do with the first strand, we're also going to do with the second strand. From here, I'm going to put on my knot cover. I have 2 knot covers here, one for either side, along with my clasp and a loop. I'm going to put on the knot cover, if you're not familiar with them, with that needle of the Griffin silk going through towards the interior or towards the ball end of that knot cover, which is going to hold the knot that we just created. Take it the whole way down to the end of your silk and make sure, depending on what size Griffin silk you're using, that that is not going to come out through that knot cover. The knot's going to hang out basically right in the middle when we close up that clamshell. On the opposite side here, I'm going to make my first bead free floating. So my first bead that's going to sit up near my neckline is going to be a free floating bead. I'm going to take the thread and needle through this beaded bead as much as possible through kind of at a nice straight angle. You can, if you want to, have a knot on either side of the bead, especially if you're just using a gemstone or a smaller bead. You can certainly knot anywhere along this. I'm going to have other YouTube videos that you can reference, and we'll put those down in the link section as well too, that you can comment on the different things that you use for your section of this beading. I want this to be a short piece of thread because I only want it to sit about 14 to 15 inches from the neck, so it's right here, right in the middle. You're going to measure that amount of space. You can do that with a ruler if you want. Go ahead and hold right at that measurement and tie a knot. Again, remember we did a knot on the other side, but basically what this is going to do is just help me know where to hold it. So I didn't do a knot after the first knot cover. This is just basically where to hold. Now what I'm going to do is put the knot cover on so it's the opposite way. When I'm putting the knot cover on this time, I'm not going in through that loop. We're going into the bottom. So we're going into the bottom, and then we're going to tie a knot around the top here. Now that little knot there, you can actually, if you want to, pull it up inside and wiggle it through that knot cover, and that's going to be the distance that you want to hold it. You're going to tie another knot right over top of that one to make that a little bit bigger and more substantial, so that way it will hide out in our knot cover. From here, you can grab some glue, even some permalac if you want, and actually glue that knot. You can also grab your thread burner and burn that. You'll smell a little bit of smoke. I actually have a wire cutters here, and I'm just going to cut that down for now. I'm gonna repeat the exact same thing with the rest of my griffin beading thread, tying a knot and going into that knot cover. I'll then show you how I'm going to attach these pieces together and how we're gonna knot off the other way before adding the extra clasp. So once you have the first end done, you can see the knot cover sitting here, and I have my clasp kind of ready to go. If you want to keep it very, very minimalistic and just do one strand, kind of looking at the necklace that I have on, it would just be the top strand hanging out there. You could certainly do that. What I'm going to do is share the knot covers and have a second strand going through the knot covers. So the first thing that I did was at the end of my silk, I've tied a double knot to make sure that it's thick enough again to not go through the knot cover. I'm going to go through this first knot cover, and you might need to pull the knot that's there up a little bit. Take your needle and thread through that knot cover from the loop side or from the middle towards the base. Pull that cording all the way through there, and it should stop right in the middle with those knots. So now you have those two knots that are going to hang out in the actual portion of the knot cover. There's plenty of space for two, so you don't have to worry about that. The first bead that I did as a free floating bead. I did not tie it into space at all. And what I'm gonna do is kind of hold and figure out exactly where I want my center charm to be. Prior to doing that, you wanna get your center charm ready. All I'm doing is using one of the triangle links, a jump ring, and this little gold-filled charm. I'm gonna take the jump ring and open it. The jump ring is gonna have an opening or a slit in it. And what we wanna do is make sure that we're not affecting the actual rounded section of the loop. To do so, to open it, you're gonna slide to the side, separating it on an angle. Slide on your charm, slide on your little beaded bead there, and close it up. You kind of heard a snap maybe. That's making sure that it's actually closed. I go past the closure point a little bit and it'll snap back into place. I now have that ready to go to hang down below that Montego bead that I have above. I know where I want to hold it, and what I'm going to do is actually hold and kind of pinch there and take two strands through the center of my loop. The reason I'm doing this is because the loop sits straight. If the loop was to the side, I could take the cording right through to the side, but I don't want my little charm here, that triangle link, to sit off centered. Once the loop is through, I'm going to go through the triangle here and wrap that loop around the triangle and the charm. That's going to create basically a little stop there and a little loop that the charm will hang and sit nicely. Prior to closing off the end, I'm going to make sure that it's sitting exactly where I want it to be and that it's not too far down or too high up. If I want to make sure that this will not come off, and I can move it around right now, kind of pulling it up to position it better. And if I want to make sure that it's not going to move around, I can take the piece here and just tie a knot right over left, left over right, and that'll work as an anchor. I'm going to let it free form, kind of float there. Come to the other side of my cording when it's in the middle. So at this point, I'll hold it up away from the cording here, and I'm going to let this one sit down a little bit lower since it is for my sister, and go in here and go back up through the end of the silk cording where it's ending, through the knot cover, and tie a loop and a knot on the other side, just like we did previously. If you want to, you can tie a knot like I did on the first side, so you know exactly where to hold it and force that through to the knotting. Go ahead on this other side here, move that knot cover down a little bit, tie those two knots so that way it stays in place. Now there's going to be many ways that you can add the charms and endless options for beads that you can add to a necklace and a design like this. I just really wanted to show you how to do the ends and how to do them nicely and keep that minimalist look. Sharing the knot cover is one way to do that. Once you have that knot, you can take some glue down that knot, and then cut off the extra with a scissors, or even in this case with the wire cutters. So once you have the ends of the necklaces finished, and like I said, you can glue those knots if you want, we're gonna get in and we're gonna use the knot covers and attach to the loop and the ends. I have a gold-filled little clasp here and a loop for the other side. We'll start making sure, and you want to make sure if you are using a necklace that does have a front or a back, it's always nice to put on the right-hand side that's going to be at the back, the actual clasp portion, something to remember. So that way you don't have to awkwardly put it, kind of that's the jewelry standard, is that the lobster section or this little C-crimp is going to be off to the right-hand side. Starting with the other side here, I have my jump ring that I'm putting on. You can do this with a round nose pliers or with the needle nose pliers, that you're gonna pull that little section here of that cording, that little loop, down in towards that knot cover. Once you pull it in towards the knot cover, you're gonna kind of squish down a tiny little bit, almost making it disappear inside the knot cover. Go in then and using your pliers, kind of put it to the side so you can see, you're gonna squash down and make sure those knots are inside of the knot cover. If you happen to have a little bit of the cording showing on the outside, that's okay. You can take your thread zap or your thread burner and burn down those little edges of thread. Because it is silk cording, it will turn black like you see, and it will smell a little bit, but if you keep burning down, it will go and disappear kind of inside to that crimped loop. On the other side, it's gonna be the same thing. If you do have a lot of cording exposed on the ends, you can always go in and trim that down, especially if you do add a drop of glue onto it. It makes that ending really, really stiff and easy to chop off. Coming in then, I'm gonna put on my loop, get that other side bended down. I like to try to keep it nice and rounded if possible, and then close up that loop. Again, if you have a little bit of cording that's showing on the sides, you can trim that down with a nice pair of scissors, which I actually have a little pair of sewing scissors here that I can go in and chop that down, or you can go in again with your little covers and have them done. At this point then, your minimalist necklace is done. It's again very, very simple, and you have so much Griffin beading silk used that what you're going to want to do is to put it back on to the actual size, and that way you can keep track of what size it is, so that way you can make more if you want to of these nice minimalist designs. Thanks so much for joining me and making this simple minimalist necklace. Remember, if you need any of the supplies, they're listed below me in the little description box. There's links to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. As always, you can also post and join in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel as well as hit that little like button. That way you get regular updates when we have videos that we think that you'll enjoy, and that will help you become a beader. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and enjoy your own minimalist necklace.